It doesn't matter to me. I can't hear it all the way up here. It's just if it bothers you. So if at any point it starts to bother you in the back, go ahead and close it, okay? All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? So my name's Steve. That's me there in the really tiny font, Steve Pousty. How many of you have seen me talk at DevNexus before? Is that that hand's just up? You have, yeah. It's okay. You can leave it. So one. If you haven't seen me talk before, my talks are generally very interactive, and I actually like that. I would prefer if people ask questions and discuss things. DevNexus is actually one of my favorite shows because you guys. So I say guys because I'm from New York, right? It is a gender-neutral term where I come from when speaking to a group of people. I wouldn't say directly to you, hey guy, but I would say hey guys, even if you were a group of women. So I apologize in advance. I mean everyone. Yes? Use guys. I'm not from Queens. I'm from upstate New York. Use guys, right? That would be, but I just say guys is my group of people term. So I love DevNexus because people here are usually generally interactive and willing to talk. And this is the first time I'm giving this as a very large talk. This is a nucleus of a talk I gave at Cisco DevNet last year, and then I expanded it around a topic I really find interesting, and I wanted to premiere it here because I really like the interaction and feedback I get and people discussing things. So please interrupt and discuss with me, or at least raise your hand when I ask you to raise your hand for questions to help. The original title was something about the evolution of hardware and software and blah, 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 blah. And as I went through this more, actually the real point of my talk is two things. Why can't tech seem to get past second grade biology metaphors? And the second part is, and this is, if you saw my microservices talk from last year, keep going on this theme is, you are fine the way you are. I know that I'm an evangelist, so I'm a part marketer and marketing and sales, and all of us like to try to make you feel bad that you haven't adopted technology X, or you're not using this pattern Y, or something else. And part of this talk is to tell you you're okay exactly where you are, maybe, probably, okay? There's the bit.ly link at the bottom these are Google slides, so if you want them later, Creative Commons 1 or 0 or share alike, just cite me. You can use them however you want, okay? I should put that actually in the footer of the slide. And I'm the Steve Zero on Twitter and IRC and all those other places. So it's Dr. Steve to you, by the way. So my background on this one is I actually have a PhD in biology, in ecology to be specific. And so I encountered a lot of these patterns that I see the tech world using, like ecosystems and a whole bunch of other stuff, and usually they're applied half-heartedly and not very well at all. And so part of my talk today is to help you think past some of the simplistic second-grade biology ones we get. And if you want to talk to me about terrestrial isopods in the Negev desert of Israel, I'm your man, okay? So, and part of it is having that, I always feel like I'm butting my head against the wall with people taking these metaphors and going wrong. Do you ever recognize this video? Some people, yeah, it's David Byrne, and same as it ever was. Same as it ever was, right? So this is one of the dominant metaphors. What is this one? It's a fox eating a rabbit. What is that? In biology, what's that called? Predator-Prey, predation, right? The other metaphor we usually use is, look at all these animals going around the carcass. What's that? They're all something for that carcass. Yes! You passed second grade biology. So the dominant metaphors we always use, it seems, in the tech world is competition and prey, predator-prey. And one of the ones, so I'm going to start with and I hate it, because I think there's much more to the world than those two antagonistic ways of interacting. Right? And so I want us to think and explore some of this in other ways. So case one, in general, I think software people think they are self-made and they are the God's gift to the earth. Right? And I feel like every single one of them should read Outliers. Did everybody here read Outliers? One person, two people, three people. One of the main points that Gladwell makes in this book is, yeah, Bill Gates and all these other people were really bright and interesting people. And they worked hard. There's no denying that. But Bill Gates grew up at one of the high schools in the United States, one of the few high schools in the United States that actually had access to a computer. So had he been born 10 years earlier, or in a completely different demographic, he would have still been bright and all those other things, but he probably wouldn't have been the Bill Gates that we know. And I think software people tend to think that they can replace everybody in the entire world with software because they think what they do is the best. And so this is exactly one of the software is eating the world. And I think to be fair, it's Andreessen, right? He made Netscape, right? So he would definitely try to believe that. But I think one of the other things about this is he was just trying to say software is becoming more and more dominant. But I also don't like the metaphor of eating the world. And we use this metaphor a lot, I think, in the tech industry. Such and such is eating this. Such and such is eating that. And it's almost never that simple. So an alternative view I would like us to start thinking about, how many remember succession? This was probably like 4th grade biology, right? So we're going to move past 2nd grade and maybe move into 4th, maybe high school. Probably high school biology is where you learn this. And the idea with succession is you start with bare resources, and then you move forward, and then it matures into a forest, right, over time. And there is competition and predation happening in there, but as a whole, it's moving as a whole along a trajectory, right, to whatever that environment can support. So the prime example of this is like in Hawaii, right? We get lava comes up, it makes a rock. Is there anything green growing there? No. That was an easy question. They get harder. Take the easy ones while you can get them. All right? So there's nothing growing there. So then what happens is there's a little crack, and some little fern makes its way into that crack, and the seed blows in, and it starts to grow, and the roots start to break apart the rocks a little bit. And then over time, you start to get little trees, right? And they start to break apart the rocks, and they trap dust, and they trap dew and rainfall, and the environment changes, and then lo and behold, you get a rainforest, right? Give it a couple 100 years, 1,000 years, and you get a rainforest, right? So that's succession. And I think hardware is the environment or the soil, and software is the biological community. And I'm going to show some examples of this. Does everybody recognize that? Now, this is not biology anymore. This is computer techie stuff. So this should be in your wheelhouse. What is that? It's the Babbage computational computer. Is there software with that? That's lava, right? The hardware and the software are baked into one. There is no software to write for that other than physically manipulating and changing the machine. But you can't change it without changing the actual physical environment, right? You can't program it other than to go in there with a jackhammer and break up the lava. Right? There's no biological thing that actually changes with it. That's probably one of the big first computers that we've been thinking about. I think this was for the Weather Service or the Air Force, one of the two, predicting weather. I think it had I don't remember all the statistics, but what I did like, because everybody said, punch cards. I used to play program when there was punch cards. I'm so wise because I use punch cards. I don't like that kind of stuff. So instead what I'm going to say is there's the monitor, which I loved. And that's probably some of the programming there, those cables. Right, so this is a very early, maybe there's a few small things growing in the lava. Then we get this. Now, I can see the age in the audience. There are at least some of you that have experience with this. So you're going to tell me what this is. It's a mainframe, VAX mainframe, right? Now, there's actually enough fertile ground to start doing software, and we get things like this. Who recognizes, anyone do statistics in graduate school that is about my age? SAS. Who said that? Nice. That's SAS. You can actually now start to write actual software on top. But you couldn't get to this point until what? Until you actually had hardware that actually gave you a monitor, that actually allowed you to have memory to load things up into. It's not like this software comes up out of the ground out of nowhere with no environment with it, right? And then the other great thing you get is this. I think this is like one of the Zork games, right? It's one of those text-based games where you say, you're facing a well. What do? Drink from the well. You die, right? So this is kind of one of those games. This is enabled by what happened with mainframes. It's not that one is changing without influence from the other. That's the other thing also, right? It's not like hardware's off on its merry way just doing what hardware does and software reacts, or software goes off on its merry way and does whatever it does and software never reacts, right? You built this. Does anyone recognize what that is? It's very early. Yeah. It's the original part of that. Right? That's the ARPANET or whatever it was called, the one built by DARPA, and those are all different universities. Here's Stanford. Here's NASA Ames in Hawaii. Here's another Ames one. Lawrence Livermore Labs up there. Right? But if you didn't have the router, how well would this work? Okay, guys, that was another softball. Hey, thank you. That was a good one. It would not work. So, yes, awesome, cool. Software people built all the networking stuff to do on top. Could they have done it without the hardware? No. But then once this is built, right, then hardware people start to think, oh, well, now there's all sorts of cool things we can do with this. So then we get these. Does anybody recognize these Unix machines? This is an HP, but it could have easily been a Spark station. Right? Did any of you work on those? I'm assuming almost everyone here did, right? I did. So I'm assuming almost everyone did. You never worked on a Spark Unix machine? Wow, you're lucky. Okay, so we start actually getting computers that are not mainframes anymore. Right? So that's exciting. And then we also designed these. Yeah. Beep. Welcome to AOL. Right? So you get a modem. Right? And now that you have modems and remote machines, and then you get this. What's that? Everybody had one of these, right? Yes, absolutely. And those are the best keyboards ever, correct? You changed the word. It's not just that it's the loudest, that was the best feel. Like you felt like my fingers were mighty back then. Yeah. So this is, and then the nice books that went with it. So you get personal computers and you get modems and then you get BBSs. Right? People are actually now interacting in a way they could never have interacted before. Could this have happened without modems? No. Could this have happened without the internet? No. Was it awesome, though, that some software person thought to build this, and so that we can actually start interacting in that way? Yes. Then we get this, which leads us to this. Does anybody recognize the original? It's right down here in the bottom, number 27. Right there, there's Mosaic. Did everybody use Mosaic when it first came out? Yeah? I remember when I first saw the satellite image going on it. That was like the coolest thing ever over the web. But so we get browsers, and then we get hard drives, like not big, huge hard drives. We stop with the internet part, now we're moving on to other pieces of hardware. And then we get racks, right? And this is holding a lot of stuff. And we get these really expensive and really nice routers and switches. And then we get this. Right? And you hear people here, yeah. About firmware? No. Sorry. I'm mostly talking about software developers. Like one part I'm talking about is software developers versus hardware developers. And then the other part I'll talk about something else. But no, I'm not going to talk about firmware. So we get to this. And if you see most of the talks here, do any of the microservice people talk about the hardware that makes all this possible? Ever? No. As a matter, barely, rarely. And it's usually the ops people, right? Who say, oh yeah, this is the thing we built to do this. But my point is you couldn't actually get to this without all the other things that happen between hardware and software to get here. So it's not that software people come up with this awesome thing out of nowhere and it's just possible because they wrote this great piece of software. Right? There's a long evolution of back and forth between hardware and software that gets to this point. So I'm going to leave this up. I know you're not supposed to put up text slides unless you want your audience to read it, but I actually want you to read it. So I'm leaving it up until you read it. Is it big enough so you can read it in the back? And so do you get the point of what I'm trying to say there? I'll read it out loud for those people at home who are just like eating their lunch while they're watching the video. It says, the combination of microservices, the combination of hardware and software succession, so back like the lava and plants again, have created a new community. Right? It is neither right nor wrong. We don't say the tundra is right and the rainforest is wrong. They are neither right nor wrong. They just are. And then the question becomes, does this community match the needs of your company? Do you have the proper environment for it? If you try to grow a rainforest in the jungle, a rainforest in the tundra, how well is that going to work out for you? Not so well, right? Unless you invest a ton of resources into building a greenhouse and spending a lot of money to heat the environment and basically terraform the tundra, or a part of the tundra. So my point with microservices, and this is just an example, is that over time we get new communities that arise because of what hardware and software have done together. And that new community is neither right nor wrong. Not everybody needs to be living in that new community. It's neither linear nor simple pairs as well, right? So now we're in college biology. Community ecology is never linear. When you're doing succession, it's usually never linear. You can go back and forth and take steps, and it can branch. It's not linear, and it's not just A and B together. There's usually a whole bunch of things all moving at the same time. And so this is an example of a software-defined network, right? The soil is the actual physical network. The tree is the software-defined network, and then you have things coming off of it. So this model even allows us to think of things. In thinking of succession, we can start to think of things that even where software is evolving on top of software to give us some type of new hardware. You're using that the tree is actually creating a new environment for all the bromeliads growing on top of it. Does that make sense? And the point of this talk is, again, to get you to think outside of the way you're normally thinking now in terms of right or wrong. So to pull it all together for this one, we find ourselves over time getting more and more diversity in options as technologists. And here's a big prediction. This will continue, right? Today it's microservices. There's going to be something, we know there's something new that's going to be coming. I don't know when. It's containers. It's something that keeps coming. And I want you to think of it more like this, right? So this is the Earth. The color goes from blue from low diversity to red to very high diversity. So very complicated communities, much more simplistic communities up here. Okay? Let's zoom in. This is the United States. Right? And each of these peaks is a hotspot for diversity. Kansas, is that Kansas? There's Colorado. That's either Kansas or that one's Kansas. Who's from the Midwest that knows? That's Nebraska? Nebraska has the notch. That is a good meme to remember. N for notch, N for Nebraska. Thank you. So, not so much diversity here. Biological diversity. I won't speak about anything else, right? So, if we were going to take this example and think about tech companies, what's one of these peaks? What would you think of as one of those peaks? Like, what company would be living on that peak? What would be an example of that peak that's a tech company? Apple. That's a good one. There's Apple. What's another one? Amazon. Great. That's a big Amazon right over there. Right? These companies have the reason, and most of these are mountains, right? The reason why you actually get the diversity, or if you look at almost all of these, they're near mountain ranges, except for that one, because Florida has no mountains. But most of these others are mountain ranges, and the reason why is because you have a diversity of habitat types all in one spot. Right? As you go up the peak, you change habitats, you change soils, you change temperatures. These are mostly around peaks. Those companies have enough resources to support that much diversity. Not everybody is going to be a red dot. You most likely are not going to be a red dot. No, it's not what they develop, it's how much they actually need all that tech. They're gonna have the budgets. I'll come to this in the next part, okay? Because the next part's gonna talk about this as well. But the idea is, you can live in Kansas, and that's okay. Did I point to, that's Nebraska. That must be Kansas then. You can live in Kansas, and that's okay. It's not a problem to live in Kansas. There's lots. Is anybody here from Kansas or Nebraska? And is it pretty when you go outside in the woods? It is. Right? It's not like you go out there and you're like, oh, I wish I was in the Bay Area looking at something, or I wish I was in the Appalachians looking at something, right? You're like, oh gosh, this is gorgeous, and I love being here. So it's okay to be here. When a marketer comes to and says to you, and this is going to come into, this is the softball to the next part, this is what Google does, this is what Apple does, you're not Google and you're not Apple. So why do you have to do what they do? And don't feel bad about it. That's my point. Here's Atlanta. It's got to be right about here, because this is the mountains up above. So Atlanta's probably right outside of that peak. It's nice going outside when you even just go outside the city. We can't all be rainforests, as pretty as they are, right? It's just the way it is. There's not enough resources on Earth. But tundras can actually be really exciting too. Right? There's some really interesting things that can happen on tundras that you won't find in a rainforest. There are no mooses. There's no large mammals in rainforests. Okay, so that's one metaphor I wanted you to start thinking about in terms of software and hardware evolution and getting to different communities. I'm going to try to tie this one together. Remember, this is my first time giving this larger talk, so push back if it doesn't make sense. Is that okay? You're working with me here? The idea is, it's not something eating something. Software is not eating hardware. Hardware and software are working together to create new things that you can adopt or not adopt at your company, depending on the needs of your company. You don't have to always be at the leading edge of everything that's going on, and there still may even be evolution of hardware and software in the area that you're in. Does that make sense? Thank you. I wish I had a prize to give you for saying a word. And that was the one word, one syllable. It was awesome. You probably learned no first. All children do. So we don't all have to be rainforests. Okay? That's what it comes back with this. Which leads into the next one, case 2, Google or Facebook scale envy. How many of you have heard about the things being Google or Facebook scale, and you're like, oh, I really want to do that. I need to do that. Honest. Come on. Honestly, most of us are like, oh, that's so cool. I need to have that tech, because look at what Google and Facebook can do. Google, Facebook, Netflix, Apple, the top 15 tech companies in the world, right, who have massive infrastructure, large spending budgets, and we're all like, oh, I wish I could do something even close. I could run a Hadoop cluster that big, right, like Yahoo does. And to me, has everybody seen this movie? You've not seen it? Who has not seen this movie? Okay, when you go home, I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix, you are to see this movie. It is brilliant for all sorts of reasons, and because then you'll understand my metaphor better. But basically what the movie is showing is 2 high school kids. It's a documentary. It's not it's like a documentary movie. They're following 2 inner city high school kids who have dreams of being in the NBA. And I think and I'm not going to ruin the rest of it. And what I think that comes out of that is how small that dream, how the probability that you're actually going to recognize that dream for most people. So I think and in the same way in the sports world that we create this envy within kids that they have to be the NBA level or they're nothing, I think we do that to ourselves in the tech world. And this is back to that competition model. We also throw things like your competitor is going to be Google scale before you will. Your competitor's got the leading tech from Apple in-house and you don't have it. Right? So it's that whole competition model where you have to be the top or you're nothing. If you're not doing Google stuff, you're not doing Facebook stuff, you're a loser. When that's a bad idea. Because so I pulled this from the Census Bureau. I'm assuming most of you work at companies between 250 and 2,500 employees. Is that a good assumption? How many of you work at companies larger than that? Oh. The problem is it's hard, when the statistics go into that, it becomes very hard to separate out who does what. Because the largest group that above includes some of those really large IT firms, and so the spends and everything change. But I'll show you what it is here. Think about how much different this is from your own company, though. Your average annual IT budget is about $500K. Is it more than that for most of you here? Yeah, at the very large. Is it a lot more than that? Are all of you State Farm people? No? Okay. Turner Broadcasting? Okay. Sorry? I could. Home Depot. But 43% of the IT budget for most of these companies goes to laptops and desktops. Is that about right? No, not at Home Depot either. Not even for your POS things? No. The little things the guys scan with? No. The hammers? And on average, so this is probably not going to apply to Home Depot as well, they have about 119 IT people total. And actually, this represents more than 70% of the companies in the United States. Not by total number employed, though, because the larger companies, it's like one of those exponential curves. Google. What's the 2 billion? Anyone want to take a guess what that 2 billion stands for? IT budget? No. It's probably way past that. Nope. Has nothing to do with money. There was a recent article that came out about it, I think, last year. What? Nope. Could be. 1/3 of the earth works for Google now. If you're running a Gmail account, actually, you're giving them all sorts of information. Maybe we should get paid for that. Lines of code in their code base. That is how many lines of code they deal with. I don't know if I put the next number in. No. Lines of code in their code base, that's how many, it's also 56, I think, terabytes of data in their code base. Just for their code base. What's that number? That's half their employees. 25,000 computer science employees at Google. Some of which have Nobel Prizes, Turing Awards, and all the other stuff. How many of you have a Nobel Prize winner on your staff? A Turing Award winner on your staff? How many of you have that number of computer science people on your staff? Half that number. Where do you work that you're raising your hand? Okay. You actually have Nobel Prize winners. Do you still have, oh, you got rid of the labs though, right? That was the labs. So AT&T, we got one in the audience, which is a large, anybody else have 12,000 computer science people at their company? A quarter? 3,000, 4,000? Cisco? You work at Cisco? Yeah, okay. So Cisco is actually starting to get up into the Google scale. So you actually might think about that. And AT&T is as well, right? Like you have data moving through your networks at that scale. How many of you have an unpatented custom chip inside your enterprise that you use to do search algorithms? You don't patent it because you don't want anybody to see the design pattern. It's more important for you to keep it secret and hidden than to actually patent it. You guys got that? You have enough hardware people working on that to do that? What's that? I don't even remember what that one is. I think that's the number of, oh, I know. I don't remember which one that one is. Hold on, I gotta look at my notes. Oh, no, it's not. I wish it was cash in the bank. I think they actually have more than that. This is actually the number of unique sounds and word phrases in English that they have in their database to do voice recognition. In English alone. What? But it's not even dictionary. It's even like just a sound, because that sound means something. It may not be the full word. How many of you have a database that is that big of sounds? Or of anything really, like except for sales transactions? Nobody. Now tell me again how you need to be Google scale. How's that work for you? Really? I mean, seriously, think about this is like saying you take an F1 Formula 1 F-team driving car and you say, I need that to drive to go get my groceries. I need the whole team and the engine and all the aerodynamics to go get my groceries. And you have nowhere to put them in the car even. So there's a lot of fun and money in all the places below number one. I know our culture likes to say if you're not the top predator, someone's eating you, right? Or if you're not the top of the food chain, you're not the number one in the competition, someone's eating you. I think what I've seen, and I've seen this a lot with startups as well, is you just set your expectations poorly. You set your expectations that if I'm not, how many of you have seen Talladega Nights, the movie? I just watched it with my kids the other night. If you're not first, you're, exactly, right? And then the father at the end is like, that's foolishness. There's lots of other places you can be second, you can be third. If you set your expectation, like people who say, I want to be the Uber of tacos. Why can't you just set like a normal expectation? Like, I want to make some good money, I want to solve some problems for people, and I don't need to rule the world. Right, so Home Depot and Lowe's, I'm just going to pick on you because you're in the audience. I could pick on AT&T, but I'll pick on both of you. You guys go back and forth. I'm sure you go back and forth in certain areas between being number one and number two. All your commercials talk about you guys versus T-Mobile versus Verizon. They're in the top 5. People who work at Verizon and T-Mobile and at Home Depot and Lowe's make good money and lead fulfilling lives. And even if you're not in number one, like it's the college rankings all over again too. If you don't go to the top 20 colleges, is your life a mess for the rest of your life? Mine was. But it has nothing to, that should not be evidence. Right? I guess my point here is that we should stop thinking that we need to be Google and Facebook and Yahoo and AT&T, and we even pick on Yahoo. Yahoo's like number 3, and what do we do to Yahoo? How many of you think Yahoo's a good company? Nobody. How much money does Yahoo actually, like if you look at the charts, yeah, they make a lot less than Google and they make a lot less than Apple, but if you look at how much money they were actually making, they're making tons of money. And I live in the Bay Area, and there's plenty of people at Yahoo who have a good life. It's just about setting your expectations. And this is the concept that you'll see in biology for this. Right? And this is what happens in communities. These are all different kinds of warblers. Yeah, they're all warblers. How many of you are birders? So these are all different types of warblers, which are songbirds, right? And they all live in the exact same kind of trees. They all live in the same kinds of trees, and this is called niche partitioning. So a niche is the kind of the space that an animal occupies in its ecosystem. It's water, it's light, it's all those things together form kind of a niche that it sits in, and this is niche partitioning. So the Cape May warbler only lives at the top of the tree. And it has a good life. It gets to see nice views, right? It gets to eat the choice little insects off the top. But the yellow-rumped warbler, or they're also called butterballs, or butterbutts, because they have a yellow rump, they occupy this whole bottom part of the tree. So they get to forage on all the stuff that falls on the ground, and the two never compete. They've partitioned the tree in such a way, they've set their expectations properly. I'll live up here. I'll live down here. That's great. We can share a tree, and I still have a great life. It's called niche partitioning. There's not enough birds living in the tree to actually, the probability of actually getting crapped on is small. The guy up here is more at risk of getting hit by a Cooper's hawk. You know, being at the top, everybody's coming after you. This guy just hangs out down. Actually, this is probably the safest one right here, the bay-breasted warbler. Because this one you got like cats and other things coming up at you from underneath. This one's good. These get eaten on the way up to you. They're not so hungry when they get to you. So be in the middle, not at the bottom or the top. That's the answer. The question is not, how do I become Google scale? Right? That is not the question. Except maybe for AT&T and maybe for Home Depot. But for a lot of people in this room, that is not your question. The question is, how do I get to work with fulfilling technology that makes my job better? So there might be parts of what Google does that you actually adopt, not to run at Google scale, but because it makes your life better. And it helps you do the job that you're supporting. The people that you're supporting, it makes you do that in a better way. And you feel better when you come home from work. You don't drink as much. You don't beat your kids as much. Right? You're a happy, well-fulfilled. You have time for doing Tai Chi. Things that make life easier for you. It's not about being Google scale. Right? Google can say, oh yeah, well it works at Google, that's a good proof point. It still may not work for you. Because remember, how many computer science employees do they have? One sec. 25,000. 25,000 computer science employees. And if your staff is 120, which is the high end of that middle, I guarantee you, you will not, and half of those people are probably doing help desk support. You are not going to have enough people to learn that stuff if you're not turning over things at that rate that Google does. right? Just because Google uses it doesn't make it the right solution for you. Just because Facebook uses it doesn't make it the right solution for you. Yeah, they do all their own white box hardware. There's big advantages of you as a small company of not trying to come up to Google scale and just saying, I'm going to buy Dell boxes off the shelf. I'm going to buy HP boxes or IBM boxes off the shelf because I got all the support. They'll come in and do all that work and I'll pay for that. Because you're not Google and you don't have those same problems. The world is not only competition or predator-prey, right? But also successional dynamics, niche differentiation, and a whole lot more. So go back and study your biology. So your take-homes, or map, yeah. Oh, you had a question. Sorry, before I get to take-homes. You had a question?
I think you were mentioning around coming to Google scale, and you are saying what you. So you represent the company or you represent the...
You represent the company. When I'm saying you, I'm assuming that we all work at a company and we all have a relationship with a company, and we also, I think, since you guys are here at these talks, you're probably going to go back to your company and discuss some of these ideas, trying to either spread them or share them within your company.
Right, but for, like you mentioned, personal behavior, right? You may have commented for fun that you have time for your Tai Chi or you're behaving well in the house.
Yeah.
And same time, but those two objectives are very different for individual and the company. Company behavior is reducing cost and getting more profit.
Exactly.
Individuals are, we are talking about what you are saying, more time
Tai Chi.
for fun and stuff.
Okay, so let me try to see if I can summarize your question because it's being recorded. I think what you're pointing out is the difference between the optimization goals of the company versus the optimization goals of the individual. And I think what I'm trying to point out, though, is you should take the things from Google which help you meet the company's objectives better while making your life better. Does that make sense? Like, so, for example, that's why I was saying, like, the generic server farm, right? If your IT is below a certain size, you don't have the economies of scale to actually do the generic server farm. So adopting that with the smaller company might actually cause the company and yourself more harm because you're going to be working more hours, basically figuring out how to do all that stuff yourself and getting it all working. Does that make sense? As opposed to being able to call somebody, right? Like, so that's the open compute stuff from Facebook, awesome stuff. But if you're not a company big enough to take advantage of your own support and all that other stuff, you get stuck. Does that kind of help? So my goal, right, so back to this. That's why I tried to write this, right? Fulfilling technology, so something that makes you feel better, that makes my job better, and I'm assuming the purpose of your job is to make your company successful. Right? That's the real purpose. The reason why you were hired by your company is to make your company successful. The reason you took the job could be all sorts of other reasons, right? But people get hired, hopefully, to make their company better. And so, like, if you're a printing company, let's say you're a printing house, there's only going to be a few IT people in your company. Making your job better, adopting some very complicated technology because that's what all the leading edge people are doing, when you could just as easily go around with a CD and Ghost machines. Does anybody remember using Ghost? Right? That, rather than doing all the Pixie Boot and all the other stuff, in your company, that might actually be the right solution. That's the tundra. Right? You are not the rainforest. You are a printing company, and you have 30 IT employees total. I think the cost, investment, money, and resources you have to make a rainforest in your environment would be bad for the company and bad for yourself. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say there. Just because some great company has the economies of scale and 25,000 CS employees doesn't mean it's the right solution for you. Yeah, and you had a question?
I had a question, but I think this might have answered a bit. My original thing was, so your point is, don't try to chase technology.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, so if I'm thinking that, how am I at the same time preventing to be a status quo? So there has to be a thin line, right?
Yeah.
Versus, I mean, complacency versus, moving a little forward to see what is there. Probably a mini Google is there for me. You know what I'm trying to...
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat it, just because people may not have heard in the audience and also because it was on the tape. His point was, you can't just also say, oh, well, I'm a little printing company, and what I've done for the last 20 years is exactly what I should keep doing for the next 20 years because that's worked for me, right? There is things that could be coming out of the Google space or the Facebook space or any other space that's making my job easier, allowing me to get better profits for my company with less cost and making my life better. So I completely agree with you, right? So I guess I should not emphasize that as much. And that's why I was trying to say what I'm trying to say is you shouldn't try to be Google scale. That doesn't mean Google technology may not help you, but it also doesn't mean you should adopt the technology just because Google uses it. I think when you go through these discussions, think, am I Kansas or am I the Bay Area or the Appalachians? Do I have enough resources internally to adopt this and will it bring benefit? Right? What's the community? And there might be things that come into Kansas that actually make Kansas nicer. And you should adopt it. But it's not, be clear about why you're doing it rather than because Google does it. Because Apple does it. And this is the point of marketing though. I don't think we're different than anything else. Like, why do you wear Michael Jordan sneakers? Do they make you jump any higher? I mean, none of you wear, well, maybe two of you in the audience wear Michael Jordan sneakers. But the reason why they sell Michael Jordan sneakers so well is because Michael Jordan jumped in them and everybody wants to be like Mike. That was their exact campaign, like, Mike, I want to be like Mike, right? Like, somehow by having those sneakers. So I think for us, we get that Google envy because we believe if you're not first, you're last. Google's first. I have Google envy. If I adopt Kubernetes and all this stuff in my 10-person firm, I will be like Google. And the answer is no, you won't. You'll be sad, and you'll have to report to your boss that you spent a whole lot of time and you didn't get much benefit out of it, and you still don't understand how to run it, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I think part of the reason why I say this one is because I think in a lot of when we think about our relationship to even our competitors, right? We go back to this, and we think we have to own the whole tree, right? Even though we're a 20-person firm or a 150-person firm, we have to own the whole tree. Really, it's not that you have to own the whole tree. It's that you have to say, I can make a good life out of this part of the tree. And I'm fine, but you better do that part of the tree really well. Right? Part of the reason why the yellow-rumped warblers can't go up there is they don't have this, these guys have differentiated enough that they can do the top and these guys can do the bottom. Does that make sense? The other part of niche differentiation is you get really good at the part that you own. This is also like, have you heard of the Galapagos finches? Famous evolution example? There's probably one species of finch that made it over the Galapagos Islands. And over time, they've radiated into a whole bunch of different species, and they all have different build types for eating different types of food, even though they're all on the same island. So if you decide that, yeah, you know what, we're just going to be the printing firm that handles jobs in the Pacific Northwest that are multicolored, then you better be good at doing that so that there's a reason why people pick you, and you're not going to, let's just say this guy could basically go up and down the whole tree, but not as effectively like Google. It's a way to compete against Google. I mean, I think that's what people do when they try to compete against Google. They do niche differentiation, right? Or eBay. Yeah. That's true. Right. Right. Because that's the thing that, right. So the gentleman from AT&T points out, even within inside of Google, they probably have places where they don't even use all their Google tech. Like they use Ghost on small labs because that's the right tool for the job in that spot, right? It's not because it's the cool thing, but somebody in your company wants to be taking the Google stuff and running it though, right? But you guys are also at that scale where you actually are up against Google in a bunch of things, right? So you're going to have niche differentiation, but it's at a totally different level than most other people here. Because you do have Nobel Prize people on your staff, right? Don't you? You have no idea. Because there's so much, right, that's the, yes, right? There's so many people. So take homes, you are not eating, nor do you need to be eating the world. You don't need to be Google scale. You need to be using appropriate and fulfilling technology for your actual work. Oops. Okay. So I hope that addresses some of the things you guys said as well, right? It's appropriate and fulfilling for your actual work, not the work you dream you were doing. I know a lot of us have those, instead of hoop dreams, it's Google dreams, right? Or Facebook dreams or something like that. But if that's not what your company's doing, then live within your expectations. So that's it. I would love more discussion. That's my Twitter handle if you want to talk also more about it there. And that's where the slides are. Thanks, everyone.